Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Max Warframe. Today we're going to be taking a look at another of the Syndicate secondary weapons which can be obtained from the new local syndicate, the Sancti Castanas. As I've already mentioned, the Sancti Castanas are obtainable from the new local syndicate store, after acquiring the rank of Flawless, for the rather pricey cost of 100,000 reputation with them. However, what do you actually get for your money over the original Castanas? For your reputation, you get a fairly decent 115 electricity damage on the weapon, compared with the standard Castanas 100. You get a marginally higher crit chance of 10% compared to 5%, and a marginal increase in status chance from 10 to 15%. You also gain a lot of the advantages of the standard Castanas, such as the 100% chance to proc electricity, no matter what elemental combo you've got on the weapon. The ability to lay 6 charges on the ground at any one time, ideal for choke pointy defense missions, plus you get 2 V polarities on the weapon. Plus, since it's a syndicate weapon, you also gain the wonderful D polarity that all new weapons come with. Plus, that purity effect, something that is absolutely awesome on this weapon. Now that's not to say that these are without fault, however. Firstly, as with a lot of the explosive weapons, you have the ability to actually damage yourself, and unintentionally killing yourself during a mission is just another fact of life with these things. It's often a matter of when, rather than if you blow yourself up. The weapon only comes with a magazine size of 2, comes with a tiny ammunition pool of just 30, and takes sniper ammo, the least dropped ammo in the game. It also has a very high travel time, and quite an arc on the weapon, plus an extremely small explosion radius, which can seriously make those longer range shots a lot more difficult. Now let's just talk a bit about that purity effect. It works in exactly the same way as the other syndicate effects that I've reviewed, with it needing to take those 2000 affinity to charge the weapon. Then it releases doing a wave of 1000 corrosive damage over a pretty sizable range, restoring 25% of the Warframe's max health, and temporarily buffing your health by 25% for 30 seconds. It also has the effect that I discussed in my Grammar video about reviving you if the purity procs while you're downed. If you wish to join that discussion on that effect and whether it should stay, feel free to leave a comment on either this or the Grammar video. I'd be very interested to see how you feel about that effect of these health restoring weapons and the auto revive. Okay, so let's move on to starting to mod the Sancti Castanas. Now it does come with 2 Vs and a D as standard, but we're going to add 3 more polarities in with forma. We're going to change that D slot into a V slot and add 2 dashes. Now the reason we're getting rid of that D is, as I've said on the other syndicate weapons, there's only these 2 mods that are really going to actually be of any use in that slot. So it really does hinder your modding of the weapon rather than actually helping it. Now between our 3 builds we've got 3 mods that are going to remain the same. We've got Hornet Strike, Barrel Diffusion and Lethal Torrent. Now as you can see, I don't have Magnum Force on this because personally I feel that the 5 elemental build is actually stronger than having that Magnum Force on there, since you've actually got to sacrifice either one of these 11-point mods or one of these status mods, or even one of these 11-point mods for one of those status mods, which means that you're losing overall on the elemental damage. Personally, this is what works for me. If you feel that Magnum Force is better for you, then definitely go for that, but this is what works best for me. Now for Grenier, we're going to go with Pathogen Rounds, Pistol, Pestilence and Frostbite for viral damage, and Heated Charge and Convulsion for that radiation damage, which is going to link in with the electric damage of this weapon just to boost that up a little bit more. Now for our Corpus build, we're going to go with Convulsion, Frostbite and Jolt, which is going to link in with the elemental of this weapon, the electric elemental, to bring up magnetic damage, and Pistol, Pestilence and Pathogen Rounds for toxic damage. Now as you can see the difference between the 2 here, we've got the 2 dual status and elementals, and on the Corpus we have 3. Now the reason for that is, normally when you've got 2, you've got a 67% status chance anyway, which means that 1 in 2 of your clip is going to more than likely hit that one of those status procs. However, on the Corpus build, because of the way that the elemental damage works in secondary weapons, Frostbite and Deep Freeze have exactly the same amount of damage, that plus 60% extra cold damage, but Frostbite comes with the status chance. And bearing in mind we've already got the 11-point counterparts to these mods on the weapon already, it makes no sense to use Deep Freeze over Frostbite, and you may as well just get the extra status damage on the weapon, or the status chance on the weapon. Now moving on to the Void and Infested build, we're going to go with Convulsion and Pathogen rounds, and Jolt, which is going to bring up Corrosive, and then we're going to put 2 heat mods on there, Heated Charge and Scorch. Now the reason I put the 2 mods on here is because putting more Corrosive on there, bearing in mind you're already linking in with the elemental of the actual weapon itself, doesn't really help as much as it should. So what I decided to do was to put more heat damage in there to deal with those, either the lighter infested a little bit better, or even the units in the Void. So now on to my recommendation as to whether I think this weapon is worth the grind, and whether it's worth investing the time of forma into it. And the answer to that is kind of a difficult one. The problem with the Castanas is that it's very difficult to recommend. This is mainly because if you plan to use it for defense to cut off choke points or do massive AoE damage, then it's not worth taking these over something like an Ogress or a Penta. And if you want to run weapons in a general mission, then there's no real reason to take these over something like maybe the Vacor Marelock or the Sin or a Gamma Core. Especially when in close combat, it's actually very easy to kill yourself by accident, and it's really seriously not worth taking the risk. Now, does this mean that I think the Sancti Castanas are bad weapons? No, not at all. They're actually very good. It's just they are very niche weapons, and quite frankly, they are just weapons that feel that niche better than these ever could. They are a viable alternative if you wish to take something on a defense other than the standard Ogress or Penta, but it's not really a replacement for either of them. And the weapon on its own isn't a massive upgrade from the standard Castanas. If it wasn't for that purity that's built into the weapon, I'd really say that these are barely worth it over the standard weapon, let alone stronger defense-minded weapons like the Ogress or the Penta. And honestly, that is the reason I never really liked the standard Castanas, even before the Sancti were released. In terms of taking the weapon further, it's possible to put Magna Force on the weapon if you're willing to sacrifice either a bit of elemental damage or a bit of status, or even putting an ammo mutation mod on there for a little bit extra during those extra long missions. But in all honesty, I wouldn't say there's a huge amount of versatility in this weapon in terms of the flexibility of the build. So in essence, it's a very solid weapon, one that does its job well, just that it gets overshadowed by other weapons that fulfill a similar role. So if you want to hang up your Penta or hang up your Ogress, this isn't really the weapon for you. And on a personal level, it's not a weapon that I'm going to drop everything for. Just to finish with a bit of news, Digital Extremes have just released a new trailer teasing the new Warframe, and it appears that, as we suspected, it's going to be Nova Prime. I'll put a link in the description below to the teaser. Now in the past it's usually been just over a week between the trailer and the release of the update, including the Prime. So with a bit of luck, the new Prime will be released on the 17th or the 18th, and I will be streaming that weekend in the hunt for Nova Prime. As always, many thanks for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like and to subscribe, it helps me out a ton, and I shall see you in the next episode.